I want to say thank you again to you, Beatrice Karp, for joining us on today's episode. Beatrice, welcome to If This Food Could Talk. How are you?
Thanks. I'm amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I think I just caught you did you just land like yesterday? Were you traveling? I think I got an email from you.
Yes, I had an olive oil event in Miami for the F1 weekend, and then I was doing a fresh olive oil dinner at Vetri Cucina in Philly with Chef Mark Vetri. So a lot of events going on this season.
Oh, that is so cool. Now people are going to listen to that and be like, how did she get here? Because it sounds really sexy, right? It sounds like, oh my gosh, I'm flying from one place to another and working in the wonderful world of olive oil, which I adore. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here?
Sure. So I'm 24, so I graduated from UPenn in 2022. And I think that experience was a strong facilitator of my interest in processes and specifically knowing how things work. I've always been a questioner and a deep thinker. My major in school was science, technology, society, which was an exploration into the history and the future of science, the social consequences of what humans build. And that, I think, paired with my Buddhist studies, really drove home the point that systems and organizations and governments are really just a collection of people and our decisions, which is always amendable and up for examination. And so when it was time to graduate, I had a job in cybersecurity. I had my contract for a while, but I knew that I wanted to take a year off and travel, and I wanted to put myself in the way of realities that were radically different from the one I had been living and the one that I probably would live with my corporate job to come. So I actually wanted to just lose touch with the construction of a lot of the human inventions that we're used to, and I specifically wanted to know if I could think without language. And
Oh,
so I wanted to know if I could dive into realities that didn't involve the human construction of language, and if I did, like to what level of awareness could I attain that I wasn't already experiencing. So that is how I thought of agriculture as something that would help me immerse in a process that was more manual and working with my hands and less cerebral.
cerebral. Yeah. Get out of
And
your head, right?
yes. And so that is how I became an olive picker in Tuscany.
Okay, why Tuscany then? Like, so you could have gone to a lot of places to work. You could have stayed in the States to working agriculture.
Yes, so I knew that I wanted to sort of travel the world, and actually, I was supposed to be in Southeast Asia because I wanted to study some of the Buddhism that I had studied in northern Thailand, but that fell through. And so my parents are both in the restaurant industry, and my dad is a chef and has a family friend and a great customer for a while who has a farm in Tuscany and wanted an English speaker for the summer. So at the time, I didn't know that I was going to pick olives. I just knew I want to live in a new reality, and this opportunity has just popped up, and they want me to give olive oil and wine tastings to the English guests, and so that's well, that's how this whole thing started.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were the English speaking kind of host for, I guess, the Tuscan producer that was through a dad connection. Okay. That I never knew that. I didn't know your father was a chef as well. Um, so talk to us about what happened. You landed in Italy and they were waiting for you at the airport in the room FCO road, like Fumicello, whatever, terminal.
Not
Right?
quite. I remember that day really well. There was a whole slew of train breakdowns, which I have learned is not infrequent
Uncommon. Yeah.
for in Tuscany. So yeah, I took the train to a place called Arezzo, and then I was picked up in the car, and we went to the farm from there. And I was to stay at that farm for about a little over a month, so it really wasn't that long. I had secured a year off, and this was my only plan. Um, And I think you romanticize agriculture and being a farmer. Like a lot of people say, oh, I just want to grow my own food. And really, during that month, I realized how difficult of a task that is. Like, I also watered all of the plants and the flowers, which took me 3 hours alone, to do. And after
They
that,
dry in Italy, right? It's awfully dry. It's not the East Coast of the United States where you're from.
right. And beyond that, there really wasn't much else to do. So I would walk into the village every day, which was about, an hour and a half, 2 hour rolling hill walk away, but I didn't have a car and there was really nothing better for me to do. And so I ended up becoming friends with the people in the village. And there were yogis and shamans and young people and just a very eclectic crowd who all told me that they thought I would love the olive harvest and that I should come back in the fall. So I ended up leaving Italy after that month and I returned and I went onto an app called Workaway and I looked up people who need help picking olives in Italy. And that app is a lot of travelers in Europe use that app to stay with a local family and immerse in a process in exchange for helping out with whatever they may need. So in this case, I was working as an olive picker and I was traveling for the season, really just living in people's vans and their barns. And the first day we picked and pressed olive oil, I said to the farmer, wow, this is the best olive oil I've ever had. I didn't know that olive oil tastes like this or
I
smells like this. I hadn't seen anything so green before. And so I said, how much can I buy this for? I'd love to send some back to my family. And he just laughed at me and he said, we don't have the money or the infrastructure or the resources to get this oil out of our village. Like, we can't send it to Florence, never mind the States. You can just like bring a bottle back in your suitcase if you want.
wow.
So I realized that that family, like so many others in Italy, was making olive oil and they were in the field all year round just to put their own olive oil on the table, but they were often making it in excess and they wanted to sell it, but they didn't have the infrastructure to do that. And that is how the idea started, was just encountering that problem and also realizing that olive oil is among the most counterfeited foods in the world. And I was experiencing firsthand why that is and exposed to a variety of different people who are interested in all sorts of varying qualities. And I also learned that season that as a result of people not being able to receive demand for their oil, now there's a big issue with abandoned groves in Italy, in Tuscany, but I hear all over Italy that as younger generations urbanize and older generations phase out of manual labor, it's getting more difficult, especially with varying weather patterns, to find people to take care of the land, which is a shame because it's some of the highest quality soil in the world and also like it's a biodiversity hazard and a wildfire hazard for a grove to go unkept. So I never thought that I would be doing this, but I guess it came down to identifying a few problems that were in front of me and wanting to help the people who I was becoming good friends with.
You're becoming a villager, weren't you? Let's lean into the false or some of the fake olive oils and what you discovered through, because I think a lot of listeners would be interested. They don't know. So my population, the people who listen to If This Food Could Talk, oftentimes I think some of the data I've seen is like 65% are Americans, and then the next population is Canadian, the next population is the UK. So as you can imagine, native English speakers. Where olive oil does not necessarily grow. Of course, we've got some in Arizona, California, Texas, I believe, but those are kind of about it. So please, most of us know, just what's found in the supermarkets, right? What they could pick up. What did you discover?
So it comes down to the fact that olive oil is not different from the fashion industry or the oil and gas industry or the makeup industry. Like, olive oil and its producers are trying to make money. And if you're doing that on a mass scale, then there are a variety of corners that you can cut in order to maximize profits. And as a byproduct, unfortunately, the quality does often go down. It's estimated that around 80% of what's on the US shelf is either mislabeled or or not olive oil at all. It can be cut with seed oils and dyed with chlorophyll to make it appear a certain color. It can even be perfumed to make it smell a certain way.
Right.
Yeah, and the harsh reality is that 5% of US domestic demand for olive oil can be met by California and Arizona and Texas, but 95% is coming from Mediterranean and African regions. So really how I see it is that there needs to be more of like a partnership between the US and these countries, given that the climate there is just so much more conducive to producing olive oil. But just to give you an example, like when I was working as an olive picker, there was a neighboring farmer who one day came over and said he was getting in an order of olives from Tunisia and did we want to be part of the order? And I said after he left to Piero, the farmer I was working for, like, what does he mean? He's an olive farmer. Why is he getting olives from another country? And essentially, he had signed a contract to a luxury olive oil brand in Florence, but he didn't have the yield that year. And so he was flying olives in from another country and saying that they were, you know, Italian olives and selling it to an Italian luxury olive oil brand. And there's just a myriad of ways that of why that context is not healthy for an olive. The first being that after you pick an olive, you want to press it right away in order to capture the polyphenol content and the flavor and all of the ingredients, or sorry, the nutrients that make olive oil so healthy. Oftentimes, though, in those contexts, you're not really hiring labor as much as just letting the olives fall to cut costs. And at that point, they're accruing rainwater and worms and pesticides on the ground, and then they're being sent on a boat for many months before they see the press. So these are just some examples of olive oil that, isn't of quality, but then, yeah, actually a lot of the time it is seed oil. And what I realized when I was working as an olive picker is that it doesn't matter if you're a brand with a great intention or an importer who, like really wants to sell great olive oil. It's like if you're not there or you don't have a great relationship with your farmer, it really doesn't matter, unfortunately. So it's entirely up to the farmer and his or her motives. And or else it's a business and it's a money it's a money game, and so people in the end of the day have their priorities, and it's either about passion and love for the plant and the product, or you're trying to extract as many resources as you can from the groves.
So, Beatrice, what did you do about it? What did you do about it after that? A couple months picking olives, which is a backbreaking job. We have trees. I know some of my listeners know we've got some trees in Cyprus, and it's our job. But we don't have enough trees to feed anything more than my family and my mother-in-law, like just for our consumption, maybe and some friends and stuff. But it's a backbreaking job. Right? Like you learned that pretty early. I love it, but it's hard work.
It's hard work, yeah. It's beautiful and it's hard work, but I essentially, after this season, I went back to my corporate job for not even a year before I quit, and I founded my company called Bea Olive Oil. BEA Olive Oil. It's Bea Olive Oil on Instagram, www.beaoliveoil.com.
We'll put it all
and
in
essentially,
we'll put it in the show notes.
Thank you. The point of the company is to redirect demand from big olive oil counterfeiting to small scale farmers who, without this network, would not be able to sell their olive oil in the American market. So it's not a private label situation. It's not being sold anywhere else. It's really just the same farmers who I was working for who are now getting paid for their labor and able to sell their oil. And actually now we have a waiting list of farmers who want to be involved for next year. And so the name of the game right now is to gain traction and demand. And what I realized while building this was that one of the largest barriers for a farmer to get their olive oil to the US market is the FDA approval system, which can be really treacherous to navigate both for monetary reasons and because the UI UX design of the FDA websites just aren't the best, and a lot of the farmers don't speak English anyway. And so my company is open sourcing the FDA approval process. So if a farmer wants to sell their oil through us, we take care of the FDA approval in addition to like the customs and the freight and the labels and all basically anything bureaucratic that a farmer doesn't want to handle, we are doing.
Oh, that is the hard part. That is very hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard to do, it's hard to figure out, and a farmer who is in the field all day, like it's a different skill set. So I'm trying to basically generate enough demand to these people, not just so that they can get paid for their labor, but also so that we can have the resources to cultivate the many abandoned groves in the surrounding region. So in the fall, we already started mapping out which those groves are, which groves aren't being taken care of, which groves are, but maybe in a few years will not be. And so that's the entire goal of the company.
Who are you working with on in Italy to map up those groves?
So, in the original village where I stayed when I was working on that farm, through the person that my dad knew, I met a younger guy. Yeah, I say younger because most of the village is, of elderly populations.
Probably my age, Beatrice, but that's okay.
There was one guy who came back during COVID. He's, in his late 20s. His name is Tommy, and he had an offer from NASA. He's a very bright person, but he came back during the pandemic to try to help his town with what a lot of Tuscan villages are facing, which is like, how do we modernize and set up our village to sustain ourselves from an economic point of view without totally inundating ourselves with tourism and losing our tradition entirely. So he's done a lot in that space, and he works for the local school, and he's also very well connected. And so through him, I met the former mayor of the village,
Okay.
who also has been very passionate about that set of issues and wants to do a lot in the educational space and is an olive farmer. And so he's just been wonderful in facilitating this process.
That's great. That is great. Hopefully you will get those groves no longer abandoned. What's the word?
Yeah,
Whatever.
salvaged, I guess.
Yeah, salvaged. Good. Okay, walk us through. So one of the things that I find very interesting is kind of walking through the many steps of getting that olive oil that we pour so generously on our salads. But like walk us backwards. Where does it begin? Because you mentioned summers, but I also know that it's more fall picking. So at some point in September, October is the harvest. But kind of
Yes,
walk us through the many steps that leads to that liquid gold.
absolutely. So first of all, it takes about 9 years for an olive tree to even start to fruit. So the tree itself requires a very specific climate to grow, and to grow, it has to have already been, around for some time. Um, the pruning in the springtime is what gets us ready for the fall harvest, and pruning is just the process where you cut the branches so that the roots can send energy up to the tree and get the flowers to bud come the fall. Um, Late September is when a farmer in Tuscany will start looking at the olives and check for a few things. One is, has there been enough rain? Has there been too much rain? Is the sun hitting the olive the right way? And one of the indicators of that would be the color of the olive. So the ideal time to pick an olive is just as it's turning from green to purple. Um, and so they should start changing colors, or it'd be half and half at like the early to mid-October time. A farmer at that point would also check for the fly in Tuscany. That's an issue for the Tuscan production is the fly starting to eat away at the olive.
Mm.
But once we're ready to harvest, that typically should happen mid last week of October into November for an early harvest, which is a direct relationship between quantity and quality trade-off. If you're harvesting earlier, you're getting less oil, but the oil that you are getting is of a higher quality. The days start early because you're trying to beat the sun. So we get up, really early. It also depends on the family. I'm at a lot of different harvests. So some families are relaxed and they don't, see it as, such a punctual affair. And then some farmers, maybe they're in the valley or their altitude is higher, so they really are trying to beat the rain or the sun. And then, yeah, you're just sort of picking olives and moving the nets around for many hours, which are heavy, and you try to place them in a way that's strategic so that they can catch as many olives as possible between multiple trees that may be have people picking them, depending on how many laborers you have. And then there's usually lunch either in the field or in the farmhouse nearby. And then that afternoon, we're taking the olives to the press, which is special because in a large scale production, you would normally wait until the end of the week or the end of the month to go to the press because each visit is associated with overhead costs. But we go once, even twice a day with all of the baskets of olives. And the presses are open for like 2 months out of the year, but those 2 months that they're on all night.
Yep.
And I am there also all night. So,
Oh,
so we're picking in the morning and then pressing at night. And we have productions in Florence and Siena. So between the two, I'm either picking all day or pressing all night.
wow.
And that is because I insist on being there every step of the way. Like I really want to be able to tell my customer, I was there for the picking, the pressing, I bottled the oil, I labeled the olive oil, and only then will I really tell you all about the quality. And that's important to me that in an industry that's flooded by counterfeiting, like exactly who picked your olives and ensured that it got to the US in the state that we think.
You bottle in Italy, you label in Italy, you bring them, you ship them over just like that. And then you yeah, what's that process like? I mean, do they once it's pressed, what happens?
So once the oil is pressed, it's best to let it separate for a few days. So you put them in these stainless steel tanks to protect from sunlight and from air, but sometimes there's some sediment that should fall and you don't really want it in the bottle. And then bottling is fun. It can take days or weeks depending on what type of machinery the press has. But in this case, it took us probably like 5 days. We were manually
Wow.
bottling
Wow.
and then labeling. At one of the facilities, there was a machine that tacked
Okay.
on the labels, and then in another instance, there wasn't. And we are actually like hand writing the bottle number
Oh my
and the
God.
lot number on every label, and every
Wow.
label is also hand painted but with the fingerprint of the farmer. So they dip their finger in half green, half purple, and that's our logo because it looks like an olive, but it also looks like a signature.
I did not know that, Beatrice. That's cool. Every single
Thank you.
bottle has their fingerprint on it.
Yes, every
That's
single
beautiful.
bottle.
That's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
I love it.
Yeah, it's like a mark of gratitude and a seal of trust. And then once the labeling is done, you try to get it out of Italy immediately because it's holiday season, and this year
Mm.
we really wanted the oil to be there in time, so we expedited air freight shipped the olive oil to the US so that the customers could try olive oil straight off of the branch
Wow.
and have it to gift. And then I am driving the the U-Haul truck to JFK to pick it up.
Oh my
So
gosh. Oh,
that's,
you are start to finish. I love this. Tell me, are you so much happier doing this than your cybersecurity job?
yes, I am.
I'm trying to imagine.
I mean, there's just such a strong sense of purpose that comes from bringing something to life,
Mhm.
quite literally, and giving Americans the opportunity to try olive oil that's just off of the branch.
And think about
Typically,
how many people's jobs you've given. People literally have had jobs because of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what we're going for. It's an entirely a mission-driven
Mhm.
brand, and we hope to add more people next year.
Farmers, I mean.
More farmers, yes.
That's great. Yeah, those abandoned groves to make them salvaged.
Yes.
What do you do with, I know that so we do have a problem in this country with a lot of the oils on the shelves being old, right? We've talked about, I think you quoted 80%, and I think I've heard that same number. Or not even just old, but not even pure extra virgin olive oil. It's mislabeled. But there's a lot of new companies that are coming on the scene as well. So how are you dealing with the competition, I guess, in olive oil that you might be seeing with these small producers from around the world?
So when I first started the company and I told a few people like I'm starting an olive oil thing, I don't even know if it's a company, but I'm doing something here. The number one piece of advice I received was like, don't do that. There's so many new entrants in the olive oil space. You should really pick something else.
Hmm.
And that advice, it didn't really ring true because I said if the market is so saturated, then why have I never tried olive oil of this level, at the supermarket? So I don't think it's saturated. I just think there are many options that are not of this quality. And so if this problem had been solved prior, then I wouldn't be doing this, but it wasn't. So the entire company is just a response to the fact that Americans are being fooled and that farmers aren't able to sell the really good stuff. So we don't really think about competition that much. I think more about the customers. Like I want to dazzle the customer. I want every single order to be a joy to receive. And I really obsess over keeping the customers that we do have happy rather than like trying to go viral overnight and have thousands of one-time customers. Like I'm trying to generate super fans, and I'd rather walk away at the end of the year knowing that I have a repeatable process so that I can add more farmers rather than, like a one and done shopper. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Seriously, that totally mission driven. That's amazing. How would customers describe, or how would you describe the olive oil that's in your bottle?
So there's two different types of olive oil. The farmers in Siena, Altus, and Giorgio are using a variety of olives, but mainly the Frantoio olive and the Licino olive. And so the Licino olive in particular is a softer, milder, more buttery olive oil. And when I got to Italy this year, they said that they had two rules for me. The first was that I wasn't allowed to put the olive oil in a plastic bottle, it had to be dark glass.
Yes,
And
yes.
the second was that I was not allowed to filter their olive oil because
Oh.
filtration is often an instrument of masking the flavor of poorly treated olives. So if they haven't been picked early, or the press was dirty, or there were pesticides around the olives, filtration would help mask that flavor. But also in the US, grocery stores don't really want to handle unfiltered olive oil because the shelf life is much shorter. But the farmer's argument was like, I've treated my olives with such care that it would be a shame to filter the olive oil because when you filter, you also extract some of the good nutrients. And so we weren't allowed to filter that oil. Okay, so
Wow.
what's the unfiltered oil?
Got unfiltered buttery olive oil. Okay,
Yes,
one
and then
bottle.
from Florence, that farmer Francesco does like to filter his olive oil because he thinks it makes a purer, cleaner flavor. And the olives that he's using are mainly Frantoio olives, Moriolo olives, and Mignola olives. So those are the ones that are prized for high polyphenol, grassy, pungent, and that is the reaction that that we
Yeah, yeah.
often get when people are trying the oil for the first time is like, oh my gosh, this is so strong, this is fruity, this is grassy,
Cough. The cough.
and they cough, yeah. So that's a mark of how fresh the olive oil is how much coughing is going on. It's not supposed to be a backseat flavor. It's really supposed to take the main sensory stage if it's super fresh.
Does your father now use your oils in his farm?
Absolutely. Yeah. His clients do. He does. He's very excited about it.
I'm sure they're very proud of you. Let's be real. So
Thank
what's
you.
yeah. So next steps for Bia Olive?
It's a really good question. Like, I quit my job in July of this year, and that's when I committed to the idea, which then gave me 2 months to build a brand, make a logo, figure out FDA, figure out customs and freight, and then we had the harvest in October, and then by December I was selling. And really, since December, I haven't stopped selling. So most of what I'm up to is like packing boxes, doing events, giving tastings, giving talks. So the idea right now is like generating more demand so that we can scale very slowly and in the right way and add more farmers to the list. But it just seems like because Bay olive oil was birthed out of like a problem solution mindset, that is also what seems to pave the road in front of us. So I'm not like I need to build an empire. I need to have the biggest company in the world and then sell it in 3 years. That's not really how I'm thinking about this. It's more like, what do the farmers want? What do the customers want? And that's really the business plan, is asking those questions every day.
Well, I am so very glad that we've had you on this program, and I'm so glad that you're in this world. You're doing so much good. You've used your big, beautiful brain and the connections that you have, and you've found a problem, found a solution, and you're helping a lot of people along the way. Not only get better quality olive oil and cook with them, but again, I'm going back to those farmers. I bet they really appreciate you, Beatrice.
Thank you, Claudia. And thanks for helping me share the story on your platform. Really, really appreciate it.
This totally, totally my pleasure. Pleasure. All right. Thanks so much for being, and we'll thank you so much, Beatrice, for being on the show. And we will definitely follow up, check up with you later on this season to see how the next year's harvest is coming along.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you so, so much.
Thanks.